Welcome to our Digital Transformation Community podcast in Africa, a podcast where we discuss everything technology oriented and digital transformation. This podcast was conceptualized by Sarah Luyele Njamu, the CEO of CompuConnect Education, in response to the knowledge gap that exists in the digital innovation market within the African context. This platform seeks to build a community where people with expertise in digital transformation and technology can share their insights while at the same time equipping and supporting executives and managers with the knowledge needed to succeed on the digital transformation journey within the African context. The conversations on this platform seek to teach, inform, and inspire listeners to leverage digital innovations in order to bring efficiency to their organizations and save costs. If this channel is of interest to you, please click subscribe so that whenever a new podcast is uploaded, you can be notified. Now, here is today's conversation. Okay, good morning to all the listeners. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to our podcast yet again. Today, I am excited to bring you an esteemed guest. I am in conversation with Peter. Peter is a digital transformation guru. He has written a book on digital transformation that I sat and just read through the night. It's an amazing book. I think everybody should put their hands on that if you want to understand and just learn what digital transformation is all about and gain insights around the subject. So we are going to get into our conversation straight on. I'm going to ask Peter to tell us more about himself. Peter, welcome to the podcast. Please, can you just tell our listeners who you are and what you do, and just the journey that you've walked in your career?
Morning, Sarah, and morning to your listeners. It's great to be here, and thank you very much for having me. Yes, I've spent my career 25 years mainly in banking, about half of that in consulting, and then the rest of that in various leadership positions at large banks in South Africa, where I've mainly been driving, change in those organizations. And in the last decade or so, I think we've all been grappling with this idea of digital transformation as a sort of umbrella term for all the change that typically large organizations are trying to achieve. And yes, through that process and through my career, I did my PhD on agile software engineering. I've developed a lot of content and courses, and I've seen the huge need for education and inspiration to go hand in hand with whatever change that you're trying to achieve. And that's typically been a strong point for me in my leadership style over the years. And so thank you. The book that I wrote and that I developed a course about has been one of my bestsellers, and really just brings together all of the lessons that I've learned and that I've had experience of in driving digital transformation. But yes, Sarah, it's a wide and important topic for us all to grapple with. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. Peter, do you just want to tell us where you currently work and just a little bit of the journey? I went to LinkedIn just to look you up, and you've had quite a colorful career in digital transformation. Please just tell our listeners just about your journey.
Thank you, Sarah. Absolutely. So been at FNB really for the last 12, 13 years, I guess. And last 4 years of that, helping to plan and manage the portfolio of programs that make up our digital transformation. And I suppose if you look at any organization's interpretation of digital transformation, it's going to be slightly different. And for us, it's about becoming more platform-based in how we enable the business models and the ecosystems that we support and that we help, manage and encourage through our customers and our networks and our third parties and everybody that interacts through the use of our products and services across our wide range of businesses and the continuum of customers that we serve. So planning and organizing all the different programs and projects that become very interdependent in that overall journey is a big job. And we have a model of owner managed execution in our businesses. So while we have a very small team centrally that guide the overall journey, the work is still done as per our culture in our business units, where they are the CEOs, the pilots of the planes, if you like, and we're just the air traffic control, if you want to use that analogy. So my role is very much around scheduling and managing the milestones and the roadmaps, if you like, and unblocking, some of those roadmaps, where we have challenges and where we have constraints, etc. And that's, pretty much drawing on the rest of my career, being in project management and consulting, very much around organizing limited resources, planning, budgeting, managing risks and issues and interdependencies, the whole planning and portfolio management, but now really applied to digital transformation at an enterprise level. That's what I spend my days doing. And then I guess, linked to that, but in my personal capacity, I write books and I develop online courses, which I host on platforms like Udemy and on my website, peteralkemer.com. And really that's I think an outflowing of my experience and my career into my personal capacity, where I've seen a huge take up and a huge audience, I think, as you've experienced, of people looking for more information, especially as the world digitizes more and more and we become more reliant on new and advanced technologies. People in their own personal capacity and their families and their home lives, and which has been accelerated by COVID and the pandemic and the lockdowns, have been trying to get to grips with digital ways of interacting, digital ways of doing things in their lives. While it provides a lot of convenience, it provides huge catalysts for change, and people are grappling with exactly what the fundamental principles and forces are that are driving that change. And so my books and my courses, that come at these topics from different angles, I try and unpack that and make it real for people and practical in their lives as much as possible.
Fantastic. It's such a great idea that you're giving back knowledge like that, because, there is so much need for people to just learn. And like I said before we started recording, that's the reason why we actually have this podcast, just so that we can teach, we can inspire, and people can learn, anything that has to do with technology or digital transformation, just to equip and for people to actually share their experiences. So thank you so much. Now let's get into the depth of things, Peter. Let's talk about digital transformation. Digital transformation is such a buzzword in the tech industry, and just generally in the market. What is digital transformation? Let's start by defining what digital transformation is.
100%, Sarah. So I think, and what I break down in my book and in my course, is that a lot of the buzzwords come more from digital disruption. So what happens is that these technologies go through hype cycles, and some of them are well adopted, and some of them become very disruptive for businesses who have relied on ways of doing things and processes that have not taken advantage of those new technologies, possibly because they're too big and it takes a while for them to adopt those technologies. So typically the smaller companies that don't have that legacy of operations and manual processes, they can adopt these new technologies very quickly. And they can sometimes get what we call exponential scale, to the degree that they're able to then become a competitor in the same markets and the same industries as these traditional organizations. So in the course and in the book, I teach 6 chapters or 6 lessons on digital disruption. And the buzzwords that you talk about are really in that space of digital disruption. And we've seen it in our own lives. So digital transformation is then the response of large organizations to the disruption that they see in the marketplace. And the digital transformation is the journey that they go through to make sure that they survive. Number one, many large organizations don't survive. And we've seen across travel, accommodation, logistics, many large organizations who have been in the Fortune 500 global firms, reliable stocks that have delivered consistent growth year on year. Within 2 or 3 years, due to these disruptive technologies and these exponential companies, they've literally gone out of business. So all the business school case studies, etc., about how you need to build capital-intensive businesses, you need to own large assets, you need to manage the flow from a producer to consumer, which was really the second and the third industrial revolution. All of that theory has gone out of the window as we've seen this digital disruption. And you get a range of different topics in that space. You get deceptive growth, you get dematerialization, you get demonetization. And if you look at the exponential firms like Airbnb and Uber and Alibaba and all of these household names, we've seen and we've benefited from the services that they provide us. But when you look at those businesses, you can see common things that have happened to them, often things that they themselves weren't intending to achieve, and that just because they used these technologies in new ways and they were able to solve problems for customers who were used to these old companies and these old ways of doing things and thought there was an alternative. And when they saw the alternative, they latched onto them because it solved their problems so well. And because it provided such improved customer service, they shifted their business away from these traditional companies. So that's really the digital disruption. The digital transformation then is largely what happens in the big organizations, who then say, well, we need to put a plan in place. We need to put a strategy down that makes sure we survive and that we get through this, and that we too can take advantage of these same technologies. Because whether you're talking about artificial intelligence, robotics, or cloud, or any of these buzzwords that have come up, they're available for everybody to use. So what we do in large organizations, and what you've probably seen with a lot of your clients, is those large organizations saying, okay, well, we see these technologies, we see what other companies have done with them, we see how our markets have been disrupted and how our customers are moving away from us to businesses that are using these technologies. How can we respond by changing our business model, by changing our processes, by changing our operations, by changing the way we work in order to embed those technologies in our business and how we go to market? Now, the challenge is that's not easy, because large organizations are well established. They've got traditional and established ways of doing things. They've got a workforce that have been managed largely in a very hierarchical manner and told what to do and how to do it, and are then rewarded on keeping that status quo, and a large middle management layer that organizes and structures the whole business. Digital transformation then comes along and says, well, how do we reorganize ourselves? How do we change the way we work to make use of these technologies and think about our business a lot less from the inside out and our processes and our operations and how we manage things, and think about it a lot more from the outside in? So how do we become a lot more customer centric in the way we design our products and services, how the way we organize ourselves and adopt these new technologies that we see in the digital disruption in the marketplace? And that's then the role of any digital transformation team, I think, is to embed that thinking throughout the organization, to drive and run a series of programs and projects that have very clearly defined outcomes and objectives, but which can be very disruptive internally. So you bring that digital disruption inside, but in a way that is properly managed and have clear milestones, and the workforce and the management and the shareholders can see exactly what's going to happen every step of the way. Because you take an industry like banking, it's still very regulated. We have a lot of customer data. There's a lot of compliance and risk management that we have to incorporate in how we work, and that won't change regardless of the technologies that you use. So you can't just hope for the best and let these technologies be adopted without some sort of structure and planning about how it's done internally. So digital transformation in a large organization, it's responding to digital disruption, it's adopting these new technologies, it's changing the way that people work, and it's becoming a lot more customer centric in how you go to market and how you design your products and services. And the fourth industrial revolution, I mean, which you mentioned just before we started recording, is really where the consumer and the producer are almost effectively equal actors in an ecosystem. And traditionally, second and third industrial revolution, there was a large organization with a pipeline business model where the products flowed through this pipe to the consumer. And because those consumers, you know, their parents and their grandparents and other businesses in the market used those products, everybody just used the same products, and it was a reliable, trustworthy brand. In the fourth industrial revolution, because the consumers now have a strong voice in those ecosystems, you know, that feedback is coming from the customers. They see the other technologies in their own lives. And businesses that traditionally had a stronger role as a producer are now having to meet the individual consumer requirements. And that's the interactions that you get within ecosystems. So Sarah, that's, yeah, I guess the overall digital transformation principles and thinking that, you know, I've developed over the years, and that certainly I've enjoyed learning about myself and talking to other people about.
Very